All right, let's talk about the Chicago Bears. Why don't we? A team that, listen, a lot of optimism in Chicago, which we haven't been able to say in previous years. It's been a minute since there's been this much optimism with the Bears, which is weird because they're coming off of a year where they were just the worst team in football. But you know what? It's not always about what your record was last year for the reasons for optimism, as they transitioned that first overall pick into several other more draft capital and DJ Moore. Obviously, the real reason and kind of the thing we should probably start off this video talking about is the Justin Fields of it all. Justin Fields, at his best last year, looked like an MVP candidate. I mean, that was his peak. That was his best games, his best moments. He looked like he was this superstar. Wasn't consistent enough. That's just the reality of the situation. And if anyone who isn't a Bears fan will admit that he had his down moments as well. And the reality is the passing game in general last year was just an absolute disaster. Now, the question is, how much do we blame Fields for that? And again, Bears fans will say don't blame Fields at all. Packers fans will say blame Fields a ton, right? Or I guess I shouldn't even say Packers fans. Fields haters, some of which might be division rivals of the Bears, would say that no, it was Fields' fault. Fields is the one who made the mistakes. The reality is, I think the real answer is we don't know. We need more of a sample size to really feel comfortable one way or the other. And the bright side is we're going to pretty much get that this season. I mean, DJ Moore is a very good player. Is he an elite wide receiver? I don't think so, but I think he's a very good wide receiver. I think he's a number one for sure. I feel good about him as a number one. And then Chase Claypool, who I kind of like as a number two. He can win on the outside. Again, I don't know if I love that trade, but he's still an effective player. And with Darnell Mooney as number four, and then Cole Kmet Darnell Mooney as number three, and then Cole Kmet as the number four option. Got a little ahead of myself there. That could be at least a solid wide receiving core. Maybe it's not a stacked wide receiving core, but one that there's not the excuse of if the passing game doesn't work, well, look who he's throwing to. He's got guys now. Again, injuries could happen. That could happen to any team, though. So that's kind of the upside and the downside right there. The running backs also with, Khalil Herbert, who I think is solid. I do think the offensive line could be pretty solid as well. Now, I have a bit of concerns with the tackles. Braxton Jones, I think, should be fine. But Darnell Wright, he's a rookie tackle. What are we getting there? Always a wild card there. So that's kind of the question. But it should be a fine offensive line. It's kind of weird where upside downside wise, I feel like actually for this team, a lot of it I feel pretty comfortable is going to be, I feel like I know where it's going to be, but the reason why there's such a jump from the best case scenario for the Bears and the worst case scenario for the Bears is the quarterback for the Bears. If Fields, now in a at least solid situation, comes in and looks like a completely, leveled up quarterback, this isn't just a good situation for Chicago. We are, if you're a Bears fan, you're, high-fiving every Bears fan you're buying the Fields jersey, you're buying season tickets for this, for the rest of the year. You're thrilled about this situation for Chicago. Is that going to happen, though? Because the flip side is, what if it is kind of Fields' fault? And what if the bad situation, which, it should be mentioned, there were some bad plays by Fields in the passing game that I saw on tape. I didn't think it was a perfect situation for him. I didn't think that he was perfect at that stuff. And if teams can kind of figure out Fields a little bit, and the passing game doesn't get better, well, now you maybe don't have the quarterback that you thought you did, and you just traded away a first overall pick, which could have been used on a very good quarterback. Not to mention, Fields' rookie deal is running out. So at this point, Fields just being a solid quarterback isn't going to be that valuable for that much longer. You want him to have that high upside. So even if he is a good running quarterback who isn't a great passing quarterback, which would still have value in the NFL, how much value could there be there? And, I think the Bears saw this firsthand with Mitchell Trubisky, a good rushing quarterback who couldn't really figure out the passing game. Teams eventually learned, hey, let's just force him to throw the ball down the field. And if they can't consistently do it, we're going to make them look poor. I'm not saying Fields is going to be Trubisky. I think Fields has already shown more than Trubisky has shown in the NFL. But the reality is, I mean, again, if you like PFF grades, Fields was one of the worst passers in the league last year, according to PFF grades. Now, I believe he was the best rusher. So, again, very unique player. But the situation around Fields and what that means for Fields is going to determine whether this is I don't think it'll be a terrible offense, but maybe a below average offense, or what could make it a potential top 10 offense. As for the defense, there's some things I'm just not too excited about. I don't think the defensive line is going to be very good, regardless of their upside. I think that the linebackers should still be very good, although the downside would be with the lack of talent around them. Does that mean that Edmonds and TJ Edwards can't really do much due to the lack of talent around them? That's possible. The other fascinating thing is there's just so many young corners on this roster. That's the upside right there. The downside is none of these guys are proven. They could suck, and I think that's where what a lot of people are expecting is a rough defense. But if some of those young guys step up and you get a couple solid corners here with Jaquan Brisker and Eddie Jackson at the safety positions, which I like, this could actually be a much better secondary than maybe people are expecting going in. That's the upside. So I do think the upside actually would be a pretty good coverage unit that maybe doesn't stop the run particularly well, but I think there is top half of the league upside defensively. Now, will they hit that? Again, I'm not going to bet on it, but there's that possibility. So what's the upside for the Bears? I do see the upside as a maybe, 10th best offense, 13th best defense kind of team that makes the playoffs that way in a weak NFC. Again, 9-8 will probably get you in to the playoffs in the NFC. So do they have that kind of upside? Absolutely. Absolutely they do. The downside, though, is almost less this season and more future seasons. The downside is if Fields doesn't look like the guy. I mean, that's just, if you're, again, not just, if you're a Bears fan, wear the Fields jersey, yell at everyone who says there's even a chance he won't be the guy. That's what's most fun, right? But if you're not a Bears fan, I think it's a realistic possibility that we all have to accept that Fields might not be the guy. We just don't know. He's such a wild card at this point in his career. It's very reminiscent of Kyler Murray, I think, right before Kyler Murray had his MVP caliber season before getting injured and then kind of falling off a little bit. So maybe a weird example, but I could see Fields like that. I always compared Fields out of the draft to Carson Wentz. Put him in a bad situation, he's going to look rough. Put him in a good situation, he's going to look great. In a bad situation, the passing looked rough. Here's a good situation. Let's see if he can make the most of it. So, this was intended to be an upside-downside video for the Bears, but really, I mean, there's one guy to talk about when we talk about the Bears. It all is about Justin Fields, so it kind of makes sense that that's most of what I talked about. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the Bears, their upside and their downside. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. What do you think about the Chicago Bears? Always love hearing from y'all, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.